Okay, guys, today we're going to talk about the Civil War. And you already know that the focus of our history study in fourth grade is Texas. And so tomorrow we're going to talk about how the Civil War impacted Texas. But before you can really understand what happened in Texas, you really need to know some stuff about what was going on in the United States. What I'm going to tell you today is just like the briefest summary of what was going on. It's actually a lot more complicated than I'm going to talk to you about, and there's lots and lots and lots that you could learn about the Civil War, and lots of resources actually online if you're interested that you could look up. And if you need some help with that, you can always let me know, and I'll point you in some directions of some good things to use to look that up. But for today, we're just going to talk about like the basics of the Civil War. Okay. So remember when we left off last, before we kind of detoured into learning about the government of the United States, we had been talking about the Texas Revolution, and then we learned about how Texas was its own country for 9 years, and the presidents and the capitals. And then we talked about how it was adopted or annexed into the United States in 1845. And then we talked about the Mexican-American War, and that increased the size of the United States drastically. So this is happening after that time. The Mexican-American War ends in, I believe, 1848. And so the Civil War starts in 1861. So that's the time period we're looking at. So before we start, first you need to know a little bit about slavery. Slavery is when you own another person and force them to do the work without pay. A lot of times when I talk about slavery in class, kids think, oh, I know about slavery. And they'll give me an example of like a TV show where they saw someone who had a servant or a butler or a maid or something like that. Slavery is not the same as having a servant or a butler. If you have a servant or a butler, they can go home at the end of the day. They can quit and get a new job. They can get married and have kids and do whatever they want to do when they're not working for you, and they get paid by you to work, but it's their choice to do that. They could leave and not work for you at any time. Slavery is not the same way. In slavery, one person purchases another person, just the same as if you would purchase like a gallon of milk. You would purchase that person, and then you owned them. And you could make them do whatever you want. You decided if they got married, you decided if they were allowed to have kids, you could sell their kids to someone else if you wanted to. So slavery is definitely not the same thing as having just someone work for you. Slavery is not okay, even if you are nice to the slave. A lot of times in history, we'll see that slave owners try to justify owning slaves by saying they were nice to them. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. And I realize saying that it's not okay and nice is an opinion word, but I'm going to guess you would probably agree with me if someone tried to own you. You would also think that it was not nice. Slavery was all about the money. So in the beginnings of history, most people, if they wanted food, they had to grow it. They had to raise the animals. They had to, hunt animals. All of your food source situation, that was on you to take care of, right? As time went on, of course, factories and things were invented, and we came up with other ways to give food out to people and to make the things that we need. But from the beginnings of history, most everyone was involved in planting and growing crops and hunting animals and raising animals. But pretty soon people began to realize that if you had extra left over, you could sell that to other people. Maybe their crops weren't as good and you could sell that. So if you wanted to make some extra money, you needed to grow more crops than your family needed. That was how you made money, by having extra. So maybe you had a really big family and your whole family worked all of the time, and you might have a little bit extra that you make a little bit of money off of. But if you had extra people to work for you besides your family that you did not have to pay, then you could make even more money for your family. So slavery was a way that you could have bigger fields, grow more crops, and you didn't have to pay any of those people to help you do that. And most people, if they had enough slaves, their family quit working altogether, and just the slaves worked in the fields and did the growing and taking care of the crops. And so slavery was about getting more money for your family. In order to make slavery seem okay, owners tried to find ways to justify what they were doing. Owners would say things like, well, these slaves would be homeless without us. They wouldn't be able to take care of themselves without us. Really, I'm doing my slaves a favor because I take such good care of them and I give them a place to live. When in truth, most slave owners did not give their slaves very great places to live. They gave them the minimum amount of food that they could survive on, and they usually gave them cheap food and cheap clothes. So yeah, they did take care of them, but not in the same way they would their other family. And even if they took care of them really well, that's a really hard way to justify owning another person and saying that you're in control of their lives. And it's obvious that you wouldn't want someone to be in control of your life like that, and they didn't either. And you can see that in history as well, because there were lots of times where slaves would rebel against their owners. They would actually physically fight them. They would try to run away. And if you've ever heard anything about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, that's just one way that the slaves fought up back against that, because of course they didn't want to be owned like that. A lot of times their families were split up. And so, even if they tried to say it's okay, we're taking care of them, it really wasn't okay. It was just a way to make themselves feel better about it. But clearly, it was a thing that the slaves were not okay with because they rebelled against it in lots of ways. Why was slavery even a thing in the United States? Why didn't we get rid of it? Well, in fact, lots of countries around the world had already gotten rid of slavery and outlawed it long before America did. In fact, you already know that Mexico had outlawed slavery even before the Texas Revolution happened. So we know if other people were getting rid of it, why wasn't the United States? Well, on this map, I'm going to kind of show you these states up here. The ones in blue were not for slavery. And in fact, they had outlawed it in their states. And remember that in the United States, the states have the power to make their own laws. Those laws are not supposed to go against the United States laws, but since the United States had not made a specific law concerning slavery, then each state made their own decision if they would allow it or not. And so these states said, we don't want slavery. We don't think it's the right thing to do. Now, it was a lot easier for those northern states to do that because their main way of making money was not farming. These states in the blue, their main way of making money at this time in history was with factories. They were actually creating things and selling them to other places. So it was a little bit easier decision for them to say, okay, we can make money other ways. We don't need slaves. Okay, these states right here, called border states, they did say that it was okay to have slavery, these ones right here. And then these states down here said, yes, we say that in our state, slavery is legal no matter what you say. And you can see that Texas is a part of that. And part of the reason for that is because the main way of making money in this part of the United States, in the southern part, was through farming. So again, if you wanted to make a lot of money in farming, the theory was that you needed slaves to do that. So you can kind of see the divide right there. Now, of course, the country wasn't actually cut into pieces. That's just how the map made it look. Now, what happened was there were some kind of things going around, and it was rumored that the federal government, that's United States government in Washington, D.C., was going to make a law saying that no state in the United States could have slavery anymore. And these people in the South said, well, now, if you get rid of slavery, we're all going to be poor. We don't want to do that. So those states decided that they would leave. We're not going to be a part of the United States anymore. If you're going to try to boss us around about slavery, we're going to leave. So the states who stayed a part of the United States were called the Union. They were the northern portion of the United States. And the states who left the Union created their own new country, and they said, okay, we're not a part of the United States anymore. We're our own country, and we're going to call ourselves the Confederate States of America. So I'm going to go back to this map again for just a minute. So these people said, we're going to be a part, we're still the United States. These states right here on the border, even though they had slavery, they stayed in the United States. And these on the bottom, they said, okay, we're just breaking up with you. We're not a part of the United States. We're going to be our own country. We don't like you anymore. Now, when that happened, Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States. And he actually said, it's illegal for you to just say you're going to leave because you don't like the rules of the United States. You can't do it. You can't leave the United States. But the South said, yes, we can, and we are. And they elected their own new president. His name was Jefferson Davis, and he was the president of the Confederate States of America. Of course, there was a fight over that. So the South had a fight with the North. That's what the Civil War is. A Civil War is a fight where one country fights itself. And in this case, the Northern general was General Ulysses Grant, and the Southern general was Robert E. Lee. So this is General Grant, this is General Lee. They were the leaders of the armies. All right, how did each part think they were going to win the war? This is actually kind of important to what we're going to learn about in Texas. So in the South, we did not have a lot of money. We did not have a lot of supplies, but in the South, were used to hunting. We had lots of guns. And so the South said, this is going to be easy. We know how to fight. And these people up north, they don't really know how to do that. So all we have to do is capture their capital, get some money help from England and the other countries who need our products from our farms, and it's going to be pretty easy. And you can actually see, here's the capital of the Confederate States, Richmond, Virginia, and you can see that it's only about an hour in a car away from Washington, D.C., which is the capital of the United States. And remember, we talked about with the Texas Revolution, if you capture the government of your enemy, you pretty much win because you can force them to give up or do whatever. So in this case, the South's strategy was just to capture the capital and get some help. Now, the Northern strategy was a little bit different, a little bit more complicated. They also said if we capture the capital of Richmond, then we can capture the government leaders and we can win the war. But our other plan is a giant siege. And we've talked about a siege many times. But remember, a siege is when you surround your enemy and you block them off from getting supplies. So the North said, all right, here's what we're going to do. Where do they get their supplies from? Well, most of their supplies came from other countries like England and France, who got their cotton and other things that they grew, and it came in from the ocean. So they said, we're going to have to take all the ocean ports that belong to the South, and we're going to have to block those off so they can't get any supplies. And we're also going to block off the Mississippi River because that's another big way that they get supplies in and out. And then in the middle, we're going to tear up any railroads they have so they can't move the supplies around. So that was called the Anaconda Plan because, as you know, an anaconda will squeeze its prey to death. And that's what they wanted to do, kind of squeeze the South. Now notice, you can see Texas isn't really a part of the Anaconda Plan. So one of your questions today, I want you to think about why you think they left Texas out. I'm real curious to know what you think, and I'll tell you the real reason in the next video, but that was their plan. They called the Southern soldiers, the nickname for the Southern soldiers were called Yankees or Yanks, and they called the Southern soldiers, they called them rebels or Rebs. The North wore blue uniforms, and the South wore gray uniforms when they had uniforms. Now, the South did not always have uniforms because a lot of times they didn't have money for them, but if they did, they were gray. Now, I want you to hear the songs because you're probably going to hear them at some point in your life, and I want you to know what they are. So this song, the first song I'm going to play you is called Dixie, and it became like the theme song or battle song of the South. And interestingly enough, it was written by someone who lived in the North. So I just want you to hear a little bit of the Southern song, because I bet you've heard it before.
there we I was in the land of coffee and old time there. I'm not forgotten. Look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born in early on one frosty morning. Look away, Dixieland.
All right, now I want you to hear the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And you might have heard this song before too. Oh dear, it's not wanting to play. 1 second. All right, the Battle Hymn of the Republic was actually written in the South. So it's kind of interesting that they're sort of opposites. The Battle Hymn of the South was written in the North, and the Battle Hymn of the North was written in the South. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this to play. It's not wanting to play. I had it ready, and then it doesn't want to. All right. Maybe it'll play. Nope, it's just going to play a commercial instead. Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. All right, here it goes. Maybe. I'm sorry, my internet's not the greatest and it's buffering. It was working just a minute ago. Let me try again. Oh. All right, so now that I got that to work, one last thing I want to show you has to do with the flags of both sides. And so the flag of the North, the Union, the part that stayed a part of the United States, look like this. And that's different from what our flag is because it doesn't have as many stars because there weren't as many states at the time of the Civil War when it started. They actually, even though some of the states left to go be a part of the South, the North never took their stars off the flag. They left them on there because remember, they didn't believe that they had the right to break up and like leave the United States. Now, when you see things about the Civil War, a lot of times on TV and books, you'll see this flag and people will call this flag down here the Confederate flag. And it is true that it was part of the Southern flags that was used during the Civil War, but that's actually a battle flag. It's a flag that the Army used during battle. And a lot of times people get that really confused because they'll say, oh, that's the flag of the Confederate States of America. It's a battle flag. The flag that the Confederate States of America picked as their country flag was actually this flag up here at the top. So this is a battle flag, and this is their country's flag. So when we talk about the 6 flags of Texas, and we say that the first flag was the flag of Spain, then we had the flag of France, then Texas was owned by Mexico. Then we had the Republic of Texas flag. That's the 4th one. The 5th flag is the flag of the United States when we got adopted or annexed into the United States. And the 6th flag of Texas was actually the Confederate flag, and that's this one, not this one. Okay, so when you see the 6 flags in different places, it'll have this one because that's the country's flag. All right, that's kind of the brief overview of the Civil War. And then tomorrow we'll talk a little bit more about how it affected Texas and what happened during Texas in the Civil War. See you guys tomorrow. Stay safe and well.